In a New Age world filled with delusions and wish fulfillment by morons in need of attention, renowned experiencers of high strangeness and podcasters Jeffrey Ritzman and Jeremy Vaeni received invitations to a tropical paradise getaway called Paratopia. Little did they know, it was the same type of New Age spiritual retreat they've been avoiding all their lives.
Don't be shy.
Experiencers are emotionally intelligent.
It's the Greys who are emotionally retarded.
Come on, you can shake it.
Yeah. Stories from psilocybin and ayahuasca trips are childish and silly. Especially when they come from shaman and doctors.
Anything goes with Paratopia. And welcome.
Jeff Ritzman.
Here we are again.
Fancy meeting you here on this desert island we call Paratopia.
Are we still doing that?
Well, we've got to keep the plot options open for the 50th because we'll do something grand for that.
It's coming up quick.
Yeah,
5 more episodes.
So it's always good to remind people that we used to have a plot to the show. In any event, so tonight's guest is Susan Kornacki, who I met at the Harvard meetup that you were supposed to go to, and what's the word? Right, didn't.
Right.
But maybe next time.
Sorry.
Well, one by one, you'll be meeting them all on the show. Well, probably not all, but enough. And Susan is one of those. She gave a presentation on emotional intelligence, and she goes around the world and she speaks at universities and speaks at colleges and to businesses about practical applications of emotional intelligence to, say, business models. But
and she'll be explaining what that is, too.
Yeah. I mean, if you're like, what? Well, we'll get into that. But at the experiencer gathering, she was presenting data on, near-death experiences, alien abductions, and transcendental meditators, sort of the things that they all have in common, which I thought was pretty fascinating. So hopefully we'll get into some of that here tonight. Susan Kornacki, go! Paratopia. We here are constantly trying to look at new angles, different angles, new to us, probably just different angles, on consciousness. And so why should tonight be any different? We have with us one of the preeminent emotional intelligence experts, Susan Kornacki. And Susan, first of all, thank you for coming on Paratopia.
Welcome.
And why don't you... we're going to cover a lot of ground here, I think, in ways that people are going to be surprised. But let's start off light. Explain for our listeners what emotional intelligence is. I remember hearing about it maybe in the 90s as sort of the thing that was more important than IQ, EQ. So does that still hold water? Is that still true? What is it, and what sets it apart from IQ? Why is it important?
Okay, well, those are a couple of questions there, so let me see if I can answer all of those. So there's a couple of different concepts of emotional intelligence, so I'm going to kind of approach it what I call from the academic, theoretical standpoint first, and then tell you my philosophy and my opinion on it. So the model that I work with is called the Mayer-Salve-Caruso model, and what that is they look at emotional intelligence as an ability. So basically, some of us have certain abilities. Let's say some of us are very good at hand-eye coordination. We're born with that, although if we practice more, then we can get better at it. So this kind of follows the same philosophy. And emotional intelligence from the ability model perspective is that we can identify our emotions, we can use our emotions, meaning we can feel emotion in ourselves and also transfer it to others, understand where the emotion comes from, and then be judicious in managing that emotion. So sometimes, it's good for us to actually be emotional about something, and then sometimes we can get ourselves into trouble if we're too emotional about something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the ability model. There's a couple of other models out there that incorporate other aspects such as like optimism as being part of emotional intelligence and self-awareness as being part of emotional intelligence. The thing that I like in terms of the ability model that I work with is it really encompasses all of that, but sticks with it as being a hard science. And I think because of that, we've been able to make a pretty big impact with people in terms of educating them about what this is and then helping them develop skills and abilities around this. You asked the question, is it more important than IQ? I mean, really, the thing is, it depends. I think in the world that we're living in right now, it's incredibly important. It's huge because so many things are destructive right now for the fact that we are not appropriately feeling the impact of our decisions that we make on other people. So I think that's real huge from again, an academic or business world standpoint or even a school standpoint. One would say that, it's really important to have IQ, and EQ or emotional intelligence is a huge plus to that. So, again, it depends on when we ask it. There's a real global question, but then there's, a real specific question. It's kind of like depending upon the audience or the person that you're dealing with or what it is that they're doing for work or what it is that they're actually performing in the world. So personally, I think it's like anything, and it's good to have a nice balance of both.
Well, would it be fair to say that you could be a psychopathic or sociopathic genius but could not have a high EQ?
Yeah, exactly. And not that I know much about psychopaths, thank God. But one would say a person that goes out and commits some horrific crimes. Just think about the situation in Ohio, for example. I think that the man pleaded insane today, which seems logical. Some people cannot literally feel what it is that they are doing to somebody else. And when you can't feel what it is that you're doing to somebody else, then you are literally disconnected from that person. And, that causes you to do a whole host of really destructive things.
Mm-hmm. And have you done studies or have studies been done regarding, well, I guess cross-cultural studies regarding EQ? Like how it breaks down in various societies?
There's probably research on that in terms of something that I know that I could tell you off the top of my head. What we know is that every person is different. Every family is different. So you can grow up in a family and, maybe you're very expressive and your family wasn't. So you were seen as like the odd one in the family. So certain cultures, and this is stereotypical, Italian culture is very expressive with their emotions, maybe not so great at managing them, and maybe similar with the Irish. Again, these are generalizations, but you'd have to really, look through the research and the literature in order to talk intelligently about it and give what I would call like a real quantitative type of an answer.
Mm-hmm. Is there a difference, or has anyone looked into the differences between, say, a Dalai Lama type, a spiritual guru type, and Joe Sixpack?
Yeah. I was wondering if like Joe Sixpack actually has a better time, but I don't know about that because the Dalai Lama is always smiling, and Joe Sixpack, I don't know too much about that. Well, the Dalai Lama has done a lot of work with the Mind and Life Institute and Dan Goldman, who's another name in the world of emotional intelligence. And if you were to look at the Dalai Lama, I think that is somebody who really is a great example of being emotionally intelligent. Some of the work that he's written is just absolutely fantastic. So, you can say that the Dalai Lama is definitely somebody that embodies what we would consider emotionally intelligent. And we can talk a little bit more about this, but, I've got some theories on if you are able to manage your emotions and you are able to know what it is that you're feeling in that nanosecond of when you're feeling it and you acknowledge it, then you being somebody who has that capacity to then what I would call transcend into being more spiritually intelligent, then that opens up for you. So you really have to get a handle on the emotional piece, I think, before you can really move into the spiritual piece. And I know by saying that there's probably some folks out there that, work with spirituality that, might be going, well, I have spiritual experiences, and how can you discount that? I'm not talking about the experience. I'm actually talking about, really understanding and knowing these metaphysical experiences and then using them intelligently into your whole self.
Well, on that note, my favorite integral philosopher, Ken Wilber, says that you could be a spiritual 10 and still be a psychologically shallow 2 or 3. Does that register for you?
See, again, yeah, you can be that, and I'll share something that's pretty personal, but I think it's real relevant. A couple of years ago, and when I say a couple of years ago, really, we're talking about 3 years ago, my family has a really deadly genetic disease, and I kind of feared this thing my whole life, and always tried to live my life pretty quickly to make sure that I got everything in just in case that I had this, because there's no cure for it. And I found out about 2.5, almost 3 years ago that my brother had it. I'm the youngest of 5 in my family. And when I found out he had it was literally my whole fear around this thing just caved in on me. It collapsed in. So the fear just was out of control at that point. And here's somebody that works with emotional intelligence, and I was having a really, really hard time with this. So I started to see a lot of spiritual people to really understand how they do healing, because again, there's no cure for this. So I thought, if this thing is inside of me, well, I'm not going to wait, 8 to 10 years for it to manifest. And maybe there's something that I can do about it now. And when I was meeting all these different spiritual people, and I really went on this journey for the last 3 years, what I started to notice is there were some people that they're very talented in terms of channeling or, transferring energy, but they themselves as a whole person were not able to manage their emotions on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was odd. I mean, it struck me as something that was really odd, and I didn't expect that. I think I walked in with this silly, probably, expectation that if you are a spiritual person doing spiritual work, then you have to have a handle on the emotional stuff on a day-to-day basis. And that wasn't the case, and that really, really surprised me. So getting back to what you said about Wilbert, yes, that can be the case. Although in today's day and age, I don't think that's optimal. I really think we're talking about being able to have a balance of both. So here I'm talking about having, a balance of IQ, a balance of spiritual intelligence, using these terms, but also the emotional, really being able to integrate all of this and keep it in check.
Well, let's discuss what is spiritual intelligence. I mean, we can relate to emotional and just normal cognitive intelligence. Do we have any proof of the existence of spiritual intelligence? What are we talking about?
You know what? Here's the funny thing. If you type in the terms, because I'm big on this and trying to understand. Somebody comes out with a term and then they put their name next to it, and all of a sudden, now you've got on Wikipedia and you've got all these terms, right? I don't think that there's anything that I've seen that gives it a good definition. How I look at it is metaphysical experiences that you take, that you can acknowledge the experience, maybe acknowledge the complexity around that experience, and how well you're able to integrate that into your, you can call it infinite soul, your infinite self, or your eternal self, and how well you really integrate that into your day-to-day basis. If I can provide you with an example of that, I went to, part of this journey to learn to, understand maybe a non-traditional way to do healing around this potential disease. I went to Peru, and I took part in an ayahuasca ceremony. I've never done... Do you know what ayahuasca is, by any chance?
I think that's Jeff's call. Jeff? Yeah, we've been dealing with ayahuasca and DMT and all that stuff on this show recently.
All right. Very good then. So feel free to jump in or and clarify something if I've missed something or ask a question. And so I never did anything like that before, and I thought, oh man, I've had these extraterrestrial, extraordinary experiences my whole life, and I don't know what I'm going to see when I do this stuff. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know. I was a little bit freaked out by it, but I said, you know what? I need to do this completely and fully in order to really, absorb this and see what it is that I see and, see if this can heal me. And I was very much called to go to Peru to do this. And as I came out of the experience and was talking to this Australian guy after the experience, it was like the day after, I was talking to him and I said, oh, so what happened to you? And he was telling me he saw all these colors and then he saw these different animals. And I had asked him, I said, well, what do you think that means for you? He's like, I don't know, but it was really wild, man. And I'm like, well, that's it. Like, that's it. I didn't get that. I mean, I saw a lot of stuff. And I thought to myself, so whoever I am, I'm this physical being, it's right here, but I'm also, this eternal soul is inside of this physical being, here and maybe elsewhere. So what I saw, how do I integrate that in? Do I have to do something differently with my life as a result of these experiences? Do I feel different energetically? How do I now show up in the world with having these experiences? And there's another example, and this really was the catalyst for it. It wasn't my own thinking or knowledge, but there was a Spanish guy that was there with his daughter, and he's about 50 years old, and his daughter was about 15. And he makes the journey. And so when you go and you do Ayahuasca, you're flying down to Peru, you're basically hiking through the jungle. There's no electricity. Your cell phone doesn't work. It's rough. It's definitely rough. And you're sleeping in a hut, and it's bare bones. And I'm making it sound bad because in a sense it was, but it was an incredibly beautiful experience as well. Mm-hmm. But this Spanish guy, hiked in with his daughter, and we were talking, and he said, I used to be addicted to LSD. And he said, I actually found that doing ayahuasca helped me to get off of LSD. And I'm like, how does that make any sense? And he explained that he had, he had demons inside of him. He had done things in his life. He had 4 abortions with a couple of different women. And he said in one of his first ayahuasca experiences, he saw 4 dead babies laid out in front of him. And he knew when he came out of that experience that he had to do something about that. And so what he did is he went to each of the women that he had gotten pregnant, and they did a ceremony to lay their spirits to rest. And so he knew that the deeper thing that was coming up for him was really important for his soul to be in balance, like in this world. So he knew that in order for him to successfully go on to whatever the next part of his journey is, and once he leaves this world and dies, that this is a piece that he needed to clear up here and now. So I look at that and I say, that's something, that's spiritual intelligence. You're able to take that experience, integrate it into who you are, into your being, and actually do something about it.
Well, you see, I had this little plan all mapped out. We'll talk about EQ, we'll get into the spiritual intelligence, and then I'll spring the personal alien abduction / experiencer questions on you. It'd be a nice surprise for the audience, but man, you just came right out with it. So,
I'm sorry.
No, that's great. This is going to turn into a free-for-all. I'm just going to throw away the script. And
no script, man. You said no script.
I know. In my head, though, I build things. I'm a writer, so I build story arcs. But screw it. Let's go free-for-all. Okay. I want to ask you. So I've not done ayahuasca. Jeff and I both decided to do psilocybin mushrooms as our own experiment. Because we are experiencers, and we've read, Rick Strassman's God Molecule book, or Spirit Molecule book, and Graham Hancock's Supernatural, et cetera, and they never use experiencers in their experiments, but then they talk about having abduction-like experiences or reports of them, and therefore conclude that it's all the same thing. So we decided to do our own experiment, and it wasn't the same. There were similarities. But let me ask you, well, I'll ask you that question next, I guess. Was it similar or the same for you? But really, I want to ask, since you did ayahuasca, we had Graham Hancock on, and he said that he pretty much always, when he does ayahuasca, and I think he said he's done it in excess of 500 times. Am I right, Jeff?
Oh, wow.
Well, he had done it at the X conference. I think he had mentioned that he had done it something like 60 plus, and it had exceeded that when he came on our show.
Okay. Well, then I'm grossly exaggerating, but whatever he is, no, I'm
a
sorry.
lot.
Yeah, no, I guess it was a few hundred times he dove in the seas of Japan, but okay, I got them confused. But in any event, so 60 plus times, and he always seems to go to this forest and commune with the definitely female spirit or goddess that takes the form of a serpent that sort of wraps around him and leans its head on his shoulder, and they work out psychological issues together. And that the trips always seem to be about working on his own issues. So you went to a forest area. Did you have any of that? Is it a uniform experience?
No, I did not have that. I didn't have that at all. So maybe this was helpful. The level of focus and determination that I had going into this experience was so firm. And what I mean by that is finding out that my brother had this deadly disease. Basically, the gist of it is that my brother will be gone in the next 10 to 13 years. My sister also, this was in January, I found that she had it as well. So, it was like, are you kidding me that my older brother and my older sister had this? They have children, and their children are between 18 and 21 years old. And I'm very, very close to my family. I'm very close to these kids. I mean, incredibly close to them. So I was firm when I went in there. I wanted to understand, because this is a disease, either you're born with it or not. It's not like cancer or something else that you develop along the way. You're either born with it or you're not. So I started to understand that this is a genetic. It goes back. There's like an ancestry aspect of it as well. So I wanted to understand, knowing what I know, that energy propagates into physical matter. So somehow the energy is disrupted before the soul comes into the body. And that piece I kind of knew. I didn't know it, super clearly, but I knew it enough. And
how do you know
my goal, just through my experiences, basically seeing energy first, then you actually see it transform into physical matter. So seeing it in the experiences, seeing it in those.
Okay.
And a couple, more than at least 4 times. So, and a couple of times was really explicit in experience, seeing it, how the energy, it was something with energy first, and then it literally slowed down and it moved into physical matter. So that piece, again, I kind of knew. So I was firm in understanding how the disease gets in. Where does it come from? How does it get in? And then how do you heal around it? So when I say I was firm, I mean that focus. And that stuff tastes absolutely atrocious. I have no dealings with mushrooms. Shrooms. I don't know how it tastes. I don't even know how you ingest it. If you do ingest it, I don't know what you do with it. But this stuff tastes like chewing tobacco that somebody spit out in a cup, like a whole football team. I mean, this thing was absolutely atrocious. And
that's good eating.
It's good eating. Take your ayahuasca. But the thing was, you're traveling down to Peru. It's all natural environment. The birds are there. The massive trees are there. The energy that exists in that place is just absolutely amazing. The silence in terms of no external man-made noise. I mean, this is all completely indigenous, and stayed with, I wouldn't call them a tribe, it was a family, but they lived off the land. There was nothing contemporary that they did, although I did see a cell phone every now and then. That was about it. But needing to understand how the disease comes in and then how you heal around it. So my experience actually was about that. I saw the disease come in, which was, I could see, literally was a spiritual affliction. It came in, this entity attached itself to the DNA and then absorbed itself into the body. And then I was shown how to do a healing around it, and what I specifically needed to do around healing with this disease. Then the other aspect of it, I then look over and I see the Dalai Lama sitting next to me. It's kind of interesting that you brought his name up. And I had felt like I had gotten away from Buddhism for quite a few years. You know, I was pursuing all these other things related to the ET stuff and to try to understand that better. And I kind of felt bad that I got away from it. And I look over, and he's sitting right next to me. And I'm like, oh, my God, you know, I'm in this experience, but he can't be sitting right next to me. But I can hear him. He's actually chanting different than what the shamans were chanting in the ceremony. So I rubbed my eyes, and I said, oh, I must be dreaming this. Grabbed my chair, wait another couple of seconds. I look back over, and he's still there. And he points at me, and he says, whatever he said. I didn't know verbally what it meant, but I knew basically what he was saying. He said, you need to lay down. I'm going to help to take care of you now. And he did. And, you know, to this day, it's like, was it him or was it, you know, another being that looked like him to help out in this experience? So I didn't see the other stuff that Graham Hancock saw, but what I got out of it was really amazing. And then the kicker to this is, you know, I drew some of the things that I saw in the experience, and then the Australian kid that I was telling you about had a book called The Cosmic Serpent, and I didn't read anything on DMT. I didn't read anything about the stuff before I went down. And in the book is the exact drawing of what I had drawn out a couple hours earlier of what I saw in my experience. And it's called, I think it's called the Sky Rope. If you look at The Cosmic Serpent, you'll see there's a picture in there, and that is what I was shown to use and do in order to do a healing around this. So, I mean, it just like kind of blew me away. I was like, whoa, this is more than I felt. And I've been still processing that, and that was in March of this year.
It's interesting because, you know, of course, logical Western whitey part of me, you know, is constantly going, well, that couldn't literally have been true. There couldn't literally have been a spirit or something that attached itself to the DNA. You didn't literally see the Dalai Lama, but if the outcome is that you're literally healed of something, who cares if it's metaphorical or not?
Yeah.
It had the physical consequences, and if it's got a repeatability and something that you can do, and now you can call yourself a healer if you can. I don't know that you can, but if that's what you're saying, then it doesn't matter, does it? What terminology we put on these things or what the actual vision of it is.
Well, you know, and it's real interesting because here's where this stuff starts to actually connect back to emotional intelligence. And this is what, now, for years I kept thinking there's got to be a way that this stuff connects. There's got to be a way, and it would drive me crazy because it seemed like what I call like the spiritual world, the extraordinary experiences, and the stuff that I was doing in my day-to-day work life, the emotional intelligence stuff for businesses and universities, you know, it seemed like these two roads have to meet at some point, and they weren't. But then there's something that dawned on me, that if something is jarring you enough, like whether it be a vision or something emotionally, that has an effect on you. So because it has an effect on you, it's altering you in some way, shape, or form. And we know that through some of the emotional intelligence research that you could be sitting down, you know, watching a movie. You're not experiencing, you know, the fear that the person in the movie is experiencing, but yet it's having an effect on you, and then it's affecting you in terms of the emotion that you hold and then some of the actions that you choose to take afterwards. So you don't necessarily have to have that experience of what you're seeing, what is, you know, actually happening on television, but the fact that you're watching it and having an emotional experience is sometimes the same as actually having that physical experience. Mm-hmm. So there you go. That just proved your point, and there's research that validates that in terms of, you know, it's like you don't remember what you did last week in terms of maybe like a task, but you do remember something that was really emotional for you.
Well, the other thing as you're saying this, it's dawning on me, is that metaphor in mental terms of just mental realm, metaphor is higher than literal. You've got the literal surface of something, and then you've got what you can read into it. You've got meaning, et cetera, and then you've got this sort of abstract thing called metaphor, which are sort of agreeances. So why should something that is spiritual or even higher mental or whatever, something in this of this other realm of thing that you take ayahuasca and access, why should that just be as cold and dry and literal and surface in appearance as we would want it to be? And why do we want it to be when that actually indicates that it is not as as high or as rich in mental or / spiritual content? Did that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does, and I'd agree with you. And I'd love to do, because there's something I would love to get into a little bit, if this is okay with you. And Jeff, you had talked about, because being experiencers as well, and then doing the shrooms, and then me doing the ayahuasca. That we have like a different perspective, and then doing ayahuasca or shrooms, we can kind of do like a comparison in terms of the experiences. Would you guys want to talk about that for a minute?
Well, sure, but first, before we do that, why don't you tell us what your experiences are? When you say you're an experiencer, what is it that you've experienced?
Okay.
You can just give us a taste of it. You don't need to run through everything if you don't want.
No, I won't run through everything. I think that the first thing is, so I've had ET experiences, so there's that. I've seen multiple ETs throughout my life. They changed as I got older. Saw the Greys when I was younger, and saw what I would call much more highly evolved beings when I was older.
What did they look like, the highly evolved beings?
They were not easy for me to see. They were very, very tall, huge actually, not wide, but very, very tall, and they seemed to have these blue cloaks on. And
Jeff, is this resonating for you?
Quiet down, co-host.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let the lady continue.
Go on.
All right. It sounds, because sometimes it sounds even silly, which is just dumb ego, right, coming out of my mouth. But they also seem to have like this like mesh fabric around their faces, and there's two. And when I say these beings were highly evolved, because of it, this is. When I first saw them, I was in my early 20s, and I had ongoing contact with them, and the last time I had an experience with them was probably when I was about 34 years old. I'm 38. So it was probably around that time frame. And it was a progression of training, a progression of knowledge, and a progression of what I would call, say, teaching is not the word. It was almost like you're learning to take something over. That they were doing, and that's what those taller beings look like. But I would have to say, so going back though, when I was younger, the Greys were not the Greys in what I would call the typical sense. Now that I've come to understand that there's like 100 different variations of Greys, these guys were very iridescent looking, almost golden in color as they were moving. But when they came into more of your physical, like touching you, they were much lighter, and kind of like a light gray almost. So again, not like the standard grays that I think people talk about. These guys were different.
Did the enlightened beings, did they tell you what they were? Did you ever ask?
No. I mean, no, I didn't. No, I haven't asked. And people ask me that. I don't know where they came from. I never asked that. They have. When I say that they're very evolved, it was what they showed me and what I have had access to over these last 15 years that leads me to believe, and that I know deep in my heart as I just kind of like look into this with my soul, and that they are very evolved beings.
Now, were you ever afraid, or was this all hunky-dory for you all the way through?
Well, so if I can go back a little bit too, when I remember being in my mother's stomach, I remember being there. And I remember even before I came, and I always had this conscious memory, and thank God, having older brothers, because I would say, I remember being in my mom's stomach. And apparently I have to say this a lot when I was a kid. I don't remember that, but I do remember being in there. So I remember having what I will call now this consciousness. And my very first thought when I was in my mother's stomach, because I could hear all this chaos going on outside, and I thought, oh man, I'm born here? This is it? This place is loud. I literally remember the sense of, oh God, this place is loud. And even at 6 months old, I remember...
is this a memory or hypnotically retrieved memory?
No, this is, I remember this. I never lost the consciousness. I never lost it. And I didn't know that was weird, or unusual until I got older. And I'm like, oh, so not everybody remembers this stuff? I just didn't lose that consciousness. And so the first time I saw the grays, what I would call the grays, or a ship, my sister was in the room with me, and she's 8 years my senior, and, we saw the ship, and she says, oh, Susie, come look at this. And it's 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And as I looked at it, there was something that was literally what I call an immediate trigger. I wasn't scared. It was, there they are. It was just, it was immediate acceptance, and there was something that I would call more deep, familiar, that just kicked right in at that moment. And it doesn't mean I wasn't scared, going to bed when I was 6, 7, 8, but there was something that that kicked in for me at this real deep level. There was a connection and an awareness, and that was right from the get-go. And also, I remember them connecting with me, and they, didn't hurt me. If anything, one of the beings, and the very first what I would call physical contact that I consciously remember is it said to me, and it looked directly at me in my eyes, and said, telepathically, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. But it took my hand, and it touched me very, very lightly. And the minute it did that, I became incredibly warm, soothing, love, happiness, whatever you want to call it, just completely put me at ease. And what they were doing, too, at that moment, I didn't have, what I would call these, experiments of taking eggs, or, I don't remember, being, forced down type of thing. They were checking the food that was in my house. They were literally, inspecting water. They were inspecting food. They were inspecting materials in the house. And, I remember as I got older, 19, 20, when I really started to talk about some of my experiences, and other people were talking about, the things that they had done to them, I'm going, these guys are checking out my cabinet, looking at my food. Do I say this, or this is going to sound ridiculous? But that's one of the things that they were doing at the time, among other things. But that was one of them. And for whatever it's worth.
I'm at a loss here, because I was... It's like everything that we're talking about, I keep expecting, okay, well, that will resolve that, and now we can get back to something, get back to the mushrooms thing. But all of this is so freaking fascinating and resonating, and I'm hearing this, and I'm like, wow. This is what's happened to Jeff. There's a piece that's happened to me. It's just crazy. So we will get back to the shroom and ayahuasca thing, but Jeff, if you want to jump in with anything, I don't want to hog up all the time.
No. Go ahead.
All right. Well, now we might as well just jump to the shroom thing, because I feel like I don't know. This is all. It's all just crazy to me. It's crazy in that it's so similar, and yet you don't have this fear. And I've always thought that this fear was an inherent part of the abduction scenario. And you could even argue with just when you touch something that's higher than you, just sort of some survival instinct kicks in, whatever that is. But you don't seem to have that. But then you also seem to have, almost a kinship, right? From the very beginning with these beings.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. I mean, that is... that was from day one. Like I said, the minute that ship came, my sister was freaking out. My sister was like, oh my God, Susie, look at it. And it was just something that clicked in right at that moment that was just, it was this instant I'm trying to say the words because this is the first time I think I've ever really talked about it, because this is the first time I've really been asked about it. It was just this deeper than my family, and I had a great family growing up, very loving, very wonderful, but there was just a deeper connection, and I knew it, and I just knew it right from the get-go. Again, it doesn't mean I didn't experience, like needing to sleep with a light on, because it's like, when are they going to come back? Are you just going to pop up, right next to my bed, or are you going to, take me when I'm playing out in the sand, which is, something that happened when I was younger too. Like, when is this going to come? I think the fear that I had was not being able to, what I call, control that aspect of it. But I always knew when they were coming. Like, I always had that feeling probably 24 hours before the experience, or at least like maybe 12 hours before it. I didn't really have that fear. I remember an uncomfortable feeling as like the cells, it felt like the cells of my body were all vibrating at the same time, and that felt really weird. But I wouldn't say that I was frightened by it.
When the tall, intelligent people, or enlightened people, or whatever you want to call them, when they came to you, did they tell you, or did anyone explain to you why you had transitioned from grays to them?
No. Again, no idea. No idea. They appeared at the end of my bed. I was actually sleeping at a boyfriend's house at the time. They appeared at the end of the bed, and the next thing I know, I'm having an experience with them. I don't know where they came from. I wasn't able to ask them questions. That was the first time I saw them when I was about 21 years old.
All right. Well, let's try to go back, I guess, to the shrooms / ayahuasca. What is it that you found in your experience with ayahuasca, either a feeling or a sight or whatever, in whatever respect, that was similar to your abduction scenarios, if you even want to call them abductions?
Yeah, I would not call mine abductions, that's for sure. What was similar? Maybe the what I call it, the vision aspect of it. Seeing things and knowing that you're almost in like a different dimension, that might have been similar. But I'd have to say that is probably it. My physical body was, I could still really feel my physical body where it was, but I knew I was seeing something else at that same time. So I would say that's really about it.
Was your consciousness, your sense of self, was it at the forefront the way it is now, or was it receded? Because for me, it was receded in the background somewhere.
That's a great question. Probably a little bit of both, though. There was times that I found that if I did certain things with my physical body, whether it be touching the ground and holding onto the ground and remembering there's dirt under, where my hands were, and that my back was against the chair. So, like certain things would kind of, and I did these intentionally to try to kind of ground myself so I wouldn't get so taken away. So there was an aspect of literally like the, ayahuasca kind of pulling you away. And there was what I would call like, there were some malevolent entities that were there. There's benevolent ones, but there were some of these icky ones that were there too, and that was really different. I didn't have that in any of my EP experiences. I didn't have that what I would call that type of fear. There was a purpose for the EP experiences, and I didn't feel like some of the stuff that I was experiencing in my ayahuasca had this great purpose. I felt like I had opened up like this other world, psychic world, spirit world, and there were some entities that were not pleasant. But I'm sorry, I went on a little bit too long there.
Fine.
But
well, do you think that these what you're calling the alien beings? Do you think that they are aware of these other realms?
I would imagine so. I
mean, at what point are you no longer an alien? We keep talking about these things like they're ETs from another world, and wherever they're born, I mean, it just seems like, eventually we're going to be, if we survive, are going to be a non-local species, and then where will we be from? If you can enter other dimensions, if you can planet hop at will. Where are you from? What's your locality? And then we also talk about them in terms of, well, geez, maybe these have been here since forever, since the beginning of us at least. Well, then are they aliens? I mean, how alien are aliens, Sue?
Yeah, exactly. How alien are you? But you know what? This is the other part. And this took me a long time to really wrestle with, because I did not. I don't know if you guys felt the same way. I don't know each of your stories, but I did not want to accept this. I mean, I really, really didn't, especially with even the benevolent beings and the stuff that they showed me and the amazing stuff that they've showed me that I was able to share with in session. When I say in session, there was no hypnosis. I was with a team of scientists because I got information about the nature and structure of the universe. And I'm like walking around with this stuff going, who the hell am I to get this stuff? What the hell is this? So, there's this part of yourself that doesn't want to accept it, because if you accept it and you open up to it, then you kind of have to change your life around accordingly, because you can't just walk around in these dual identities, or at least I couldn't. But there's different beings. They're not all the same. And for some reason, some of us see certain ones, and some of us see none, and some of us see a couple of different ones. Why? I haven't really figured that one out yet, but, I think there's different reasons that they come here. There's certain things that they need, and vice versa. Maybe they're helping us in ways that we have yet to even, imagine yet. So, I don't know. It's kind of like, as people say, as it is above, so it is below. I mean, look at the diversity that's on our planet.
What was so amazing that you got to work with a team of scientists? What's that information? Is that something we're allowed to know?
Maybe. I don't know.
What do you know about the universe, Susan?
What do I know about it? Well, Susan got downloaded with information. She woke up one morning and she was like, what the hell is this? For God's sakes, I was like a cheerleader in high school. What are you giving me calculation formulas about the state and structure of the universe? I couldn't even pass physics. So, I laugh at this stuff, but really, that's like the ego kind of laughing, but then there's this deeper part going, come on now, what is this? But these beings have shown me over the last 15 years the condensation of the life energy of the universe that we're in, and the development of a new universe. And it's taken me a long time to actually get those words out of my mouth without sounding funny about it. But that is what they've shown me. There's calculation formulas that were given. They've shown me the creation. And then they came back when I was in my early 30s and then showed me the development of this new universe. And that I shared with a Harvard-Smithsonian astrophysicist and a group of other scientists that were there. And afterwards, probably about 9 months after this, the astrophysicist, by the way, the astrophysicist was firm. You're seeing a new galaxy. That's what it is. And I'm going, I would be happy to see a new galaxy, because this whole new universe thing, I just want to bolt out of this office right now, because I don't think I can handle this. But 9 months afterwards, he came back and he said, it looks like what you showed us, what you told us, is actually how we're now understanding the way that the way that the universe works. And that there, it is possible that there is more than one universe, that there is multiverses. And I don't think he had really, gone there before on that. But now, thank heavens, with people like, I'm going to destroy his name, Michio Kaku, who talks about this. Thank God for people like that are able to put this one experience that I've had over 15 years, or these experiences, and actually put them scientifically into a framework. So,
Well, any context for why you would have learned that?
I don't know. See, again, that's a question I don't want to ask myself yet. I don't know, but maybe I do know. In some ways I don't, but in some ways I do. So when I say that, there was a part of me, that had to just accept. It is what it is. I don't know why yet, but it is what it is. Because I've had a very hard time accepting, why was I given, and I called it a burden for a very long time. Why was I given this burden? Why can't I just live my life like everybody else? Let me do that. Let me do that. Let me do that. But it wasn't what it was. So I just had to come, and it took me a long time to just come to this acceptance that this is what I was shown. Somehow I'm a part of this. I don't have all the answers, and maybe someday I will. But every day I'm going to work to try to find out, these pieces along the way. I do think and believe that we have a shift literally going on. It's not just on Earth. I think we have a shift going on in the whole universe. And I think that, and this is based on some of the stuff that I've seen, I think that the whole universe is going through this shift, in that in order for a new universe to form, the condensation of the life energy of this universe needs to take place. I mean, that literally might be how, the cosmos form, or how they continue and how they evolve. But there's something that's happening on a universal scale. It's not just on Earth that we're going through this. Some people talk at the ascension. It's not just on Earth. I really believe we're talking, the whole universe is going through some changes right now.
Hey, Paratopia, sorry about this quick time out, but I then asked her a question that led to a very long private conversation that had to do with Jeff's cloaked person that had come to him a number of times. And as you know, if you've listened to the show before, we've tried to talk about him before, and Jeff has received punishment for that. So I'm taking that out of the show, and we're picking it up right after Jeff got done explaining some stuff about him to Susan. Time back in.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's,
sure.
It's nice because, nice in some way, right? To say nice is a really simplistic term, but, it's like, because here I am, getting broadcast for the first time ever. I don't know how many people it's going to reach, but the point is that I don't know, Jeremy, a ton about your experiences. I don't know about your experiences as well. So it's nice to be able to kind of connect this in and know where you guys are, coming from, essentially. Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because I'm curious. Do you think that, like what is happening with you in these experiences, like how you emotionally behave, and there's a reason why I'm saying this, so I'll ask the question, but I'm going to say something at the end of it. But like how you emotionally behave in these experiences is similar to how you would behave if you met somebody on the street and they did something that you didn't like. Would your emotional reaction be the same? Now, just hold on to that for a second, because in my experience, there was a time that I was put on a table, I was restrained, but I knew that what they were doing, I don't know how I knew this, again, but I knew what they were doing, that this was for something really important. So I let it happen. I didn't like it, but I was observing it, watching it, and there was this hybrid toddler that was screaming, it was really angry, and it was crying, and I was having a complete physical reaction in my body to the emotions that this thing was feeling. And, I remember looking over at it and being like, ugh, this is not like human. Like, what is this thing? And, but I knew that they were testing to see if I had empathy, that I could actually feel what this thing was feeling. And then, look at the irony. Like, even when I started with the emotional intelligence work, I had no clue. I didn't, tie any of this shit together. It was like, oh, I'm doing EI work. Oh, boy, hey, when I was 5, they were testing my empathy. I mean, I didn't really get it at the time, but do you think that, for you, that, how you behave in, your day-to-day life is similar to how you're not behaving, but how you're interacting in these experiences, and that's, the learning, I guess, in some way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think at a certain point, I could see correlations in that as a child I was a fearful kid. I was fearful of everything. I was afraid of other kids. I was afraid of routine trips to the doctor, that sort of thing. But I think a lot of kids are that. I think that as I've turned older, that fear has basically turned to just getting angry because I'm tired of being afraid. I mean, that's essentially where I'm at with all of this, is that I'm sick and tired of being afraid of it. And but yet I still am to a certain degree. I don't know that I can say I react the same way. I think if anything, I've always said that I've learned volumes about myself in this, but very little about what they are, what they want, where they're from. So I think that they have definitely taught me what I fear. That's for sure, and that has translated for me in that in the literal world, I don't. There's not a whole lot I'm afraid of. People on the street, going to a rock concert in a bad part of town in New Jersey or something like that. That doesn't bother me in the least. There's no place on this earth I'd really be afraid to walk. So it's kind of translated to me for that. Sure. There is one thing I wanted to ask you, Susan, about. I mean, again, going back to the EQ thing, have you seen that a lack of emotional intelligence is relatively new for us, or has this always been around and always been the same, or is it more chronic these days than 20 years ago?
Geez, here we go again. It's like what you've got going on right now. You've got so many factors going on. You've got technology. I mean, nobody had a handheld device 20 years ago. Everybody's got a handheld device. You can't even sit down and have a conversation with somebody between the ages of 18 and 22 years old that doesn't have a cell phone in their hand, and that's texting. So what happens is there's this disjointed conversation that's taking place, and there's very little emotion that's being conveyed back and forth. So there's this disconnection with technology that's created, one of the biggest spikes. You also have apathy, meaning people are not feeling things because of the desensitization of what they're seeing on TV and what they are exposed to, with video games and all the stuff that's on television now. I mean, the stuff is flying in. We know that actually does, you see something like that over and over and over, and your sensitivity is compromised. It's lost. And your emotions form from your senses. So if your senses are dulled, then your ability to actually, connect with somebody emotionally and to care and to, for lack of better words, to really give a crap about what's happening and what's going on in the world, it all becomes compromised. Then you add in other factors such as unnatural, processed foods, GMO foods. You add in chemicals that are in the air, and then you add in other aspects of, chemicals that are in your house. I mean, all of these things, they have an effect on our senses. Our vision, our hearing, the sense of touch, all of that has an effect. So, like a child, for example, one of the most important things is when a child is born is for that child to be held, to be loved, to be nurtured, and to be able to explore their senses. It's the emotional part of a child that develops before the intellectual part. So, what has happened over the last 20 years is even though we're talking about emotional intelligence more, it seems like yes, there's training that's occurring. We know how important it is for kids to be able to manage their emotions and to feel a wide variety of different emotions. That's really important. But we've got people that are coming into the world now, 5, 7, 10 years, whatever, are they're apathetic. Seeing some of the kids seeing the events of 9/11 as well. So, in some ways, for those people, I guess, who are lucky that either read or exposed to an environment where there's love, it's nurturing, supportive, and emotions are important, then hey, there's things that are moving and going forward. But what is happening with most people because of technology and what else is out there is that our emotions are becoming compromised. So it's a long answer. I apologize.
Yeah, no.
It's true. And I, for what I believe, I really do think that it is one of the reasons that one of the species, and it could be many, of ETs are coming to our environment, because if we lose our ability to really care about one another, I mean, there goes the planet at that point. We've seen what atomic bombs can do, but we're literally talking about maybe our species not surviving if we continue to become so, technology-based without having the consciousness or the heart that goes along with it. So,
right. Well, we had Maggie Jackson on the show a while back, and she's written a lot about how technology is basically driving man towards what she referred to as a dark age, where essentially everybody's plugging into their machines, and there's always a machine between you and your doctor, you and your friends, you and your coworkers. And she feels that's eventually going to lead us to some sort of dark age with technology. I mean, how do you see us turning that around and getting out of that kind of, headlong into something we probably don't want to do? I mean, being a hard rock fan, I look back to, 2112 from Rush, where the guy says, I plug into my temple paper and then I go to work and plug into my temple vision. And, it's just like prophetic in that sense that we're all plugged into the net. We're all communicating more, but what the hell are we really saying to each other? So how do you see us turning that around? I mean, what do we do?
I think, it's like anything. Technology is great, but it's got to be used in balance. Like everything is in balance. It's like the yin and the yang of the universe, right? We've got all this great stuff, but it needs to be used with wisdom, and that emotional wisdom is really, really important. So how do we bring it back? I have a child, so we don't let her watch TV for more than like 30 minutes a day. And some days, she doesn't get to watch it at all. Being back with nature is really important, with living beings, things that are living, living beings, your pets in your house, the pets that are, or rather animals that are outside, gardening. It might sound, kind of silly, ridiculous, but anything that has a life form inside of it, and connecting with that, and then connecting with other people. So, community-based, having people over your house, having you go over to somebody's house, family meetings or family get-togethers. Everybody puts the cell phone down before they actually, sit down with one another. So, there's simple ways to do it in terms of, how you act in your own day-to-day life, and me, how I act in my own day-to-day life. And then, how do we do it on a grander scale? But the problem with emotional intelligence, there's a problem with it, is that it has been typically given to businesses and corporations and universities as a business edge, as a business advantage, meaning, well, if you're more emotionally intelligent, you can sell more, which is, in my opinion, it's really it compromises my values when I go in there. I know what it is that I go in and do with the people that I work with, which is teaching them that it's okay to be human, and that you shouldn't separate yourself out. Like here's your work hat, and then here's who you are. That it shouldn't be the case, and I actually talk about the importance of that. So it actually starts, I believe, by being with other living things, by having that focused concentration. By caring actually what somebody is saying, listening to it, and emotionally engaging yourself with them. We don't do that enough. And what I would like to say is the beings that I've come into contact with that have contacted me, there has almost always, and I know not everybody else's experiences is like this, have been very caring, considerate. There's been compassion that has been extended, a lot of focus, a lot of concentration. In that energy is one of the things that I try to hold, when I'm working with other people, and then obviously, interacting with my child as well. So it's kind of remembering what it is, some of the things that they do that we as a society, I'm seeing that we're starting to lose sight of.
I just want to hit on this one thing with you for the comparison of the psilocybin mushroom with the ayahuasca. When I say to you, or I say to our audience, can chime in on the same thing. When I say to you, there's a feeling that comes around the Christmas season. There's a feeling when it's New Year's. There's a feeling you have when it's Halloween. Do you know what I mean by that? There's kind of that intangible thing that you feel like it's Halloween. You can feel that fallness. You can feel the mischief in the air. I guess that kind of thing. For me, when I had experiences, or whenever I've had experiences with these beings, whatever they are, I revert to a feeling that seems like the feeling of being a child. I don't know exactly what that means. Whether it's not the kind of thing that I'm trying to convey that, I immediately go into the fetal position and start rocking back and forth. That's not what I'm getting at. There's definitely a feeling that there was of being a child. And I know that when, we tried the psilocybin mushroom, I very much got that same feeling. That was one of the similarities that I felt in that experience to this. There was that feeling of, I don't know if you'd call it absolute innocent wonderment, or I don't know what it would be called. Just a sense of no expectation and everything being new. There was definitely that sort of feeling, along with just that ever so thinly sliced bit of fear laid on top of it. So, I mean, with the ayahuasca, did you have anything that felt like that you had just an overall arcing feeling of how it felt to be in that state?
Yeah, well, thanks for that explanation, because it helps put it into context to be able to, I think, answer this. My emotion going into it, I just had, not that focus is an emotion, but I guess interest. I was slightly excited. I was anticipating what was happening in a positive way. So that was my emotion going into it. And I had no frame of reference, never doing anything like this before. Also having what I would consider fairly positive or not necessarily overly negative ET experiences or other kind of, psychic experiences. I didn't go into it, I think, in a fear-based state. So I think that is important, like the emotion that I was feeling, at that moment of going into it. I was looking for truth was the utmost important. So I was looking to see truth in terms of what it was, how the entity comes in, how it attaches itself to DNA, and how do you do healing around it. So again, really firm on what it is I wanted. I did become frightened at one point in the experience where I felt like I was being taken away from my goal, my mission, which was why I was there, and I was starting to see what I would call these dark entities that I'd never seen before. And that scared me. It frightened me because I felt like, I don't want to go with you, and I don't know what it is that I need to now do to get back. So then I started, calling out for help at that point, and calling out for help was I felt like I was dying. I'm like, where are you taking me? This is black. This is dark. I don't like you. You look like you're tricking me. And, I became frightened at that point, and that's when, I then look over at probably my most frightening point, screaming out, quietly in my head, but it was loud in my head, saying help. So that was the feeling I had. And then there's the calmness that came afterwards. I don't know if that answers your question, but I was searching for truth, so my overall state going into it was fairly calm, maybe slightly excited, slightly interested in what was going to happen. But, I did experience that fear at that point of being taken away.
Mm. Well, I mean, I think that sort of coincides with how I felt with the mushroom, which was I became, and I have to say that I am a guy who I had a very hard time doing this at all. I mean, number one, I'm allergic to everything practically, so that was my number one fear. So I'm going to eat a mushroom and swell up like a balloon. That absolutely didn't happen. But one of the things that I have a problem with is physical sensation, the biological physical sensation of feeling detached, which I don't like that. And I very much felt detached from my limbs. In particular, my arms didn't feel like, I would look at my hand and say, these are not my hands, but I'm moving them. They must be my hands. And, that sort of thing. They just didn't feel connected like I, feel in a normal state. But when you say something taking you away and not feeling like you may not be able to get back, it's definitely familiar in that sense, in that when I would shut my eyes and see things, it becomes the totality for me of where I am. I forget where I am. And then basically, in my experience, walking with a girl through a forest and talking to her, and then my leg fell asleep. because I was sitting on the ground in a bad position, I guess. And when my leg fell asleep, I went, "Whoa! I'm not here. I'm there," and that scared me. In the sense that I felt like, God, if my leg hadn't fallen asleep and snapped me out of this, would I have been able to get out of that? There was definitely that feeling. But for you, in the ayahuasca thing, was there anything else that was similar about an alien experience versus that? I mean, in what you visually saw, what you heard, like changing the atmosphere at all? I mean, did you get that kind of a feeling of a proximity or anything like that?
Yeah, what I felt was literally that I was stepping into a different dimension. That's how it felt. I felt that I was stepping into a different dimension at that point. And it also felt like I was more open, not that I was, but that there was an opening that had been lifted, and there were certain things that were going to come in that were not necessarily there for me. That's one of the things that I felt were the ET experiences. There's something real specific about it. There's something very personal, from like an infinite soul standpoint, that I feel, but again, probably one of the only similarities was the sense of stepping into like a different dimension. But I felt like, okay, I'm now seeing things. I don't know if they're for me. I don't know what these things are. I think some were. It was almost like kind of weeding through what you wanted to experience and what you didn't want to experience, and almost having like a strength to not get so sucked in to the scary stuff and not let it consume you. At least that for me. I was like, oh my God, how am I getting so sucked into this? That was so different than my ET experiences. Very, very different than that. And there was a strength in these entities that were there that had scared me quite a bit. But again, probably one of the only similarities was feeling like you're stepping into a different dimension. I felt though that as the Dalai Lama was sitting next to me, I felt that was a vision I was seeing. I don't know if I could have gone over and touched him, and that he would have physically been there. I know that he was viscerally there. But that would be different because in the ET experiences, I know that I could touch them and there was a physical sensation.
What is vision with your eyes open with ayahuasca? What's the aberrations that you tend to see with your eyes open when you are sitting on the ground? And I'm assuming there are other people around,
yes.
Whether it's a campfire or whatever. What is the biological feedback that you're getting out of your eyes, your ears? Do you feel a heightened sense of vision and hearing and all of that sort?
Yeah, not not necessarily hearing. For me, it was vision. Obviously many different colors, so it was definitely, there was a lot more visions that were happening and occurring. And the irony was sometimes when my eyes were open, I was seeing the same thing as when my eyes were closed. It was almost like the scene would change. Even though my eyes were open, at one point I could look and see the actual room, and at another point, even though my eyes were open, I'm now seeing these different images and these different visions.
So I would take it, judging from the way you're talking here about this whole experience, you would say that what you experienced in that state is a freestanding reality.
Yes, yeah, that's a great way to put it. That's what it felt like. That's very much what it felt like. It was like a freestanding reality. That's very much what it felt like. I haven't yet to put it in words, but I'm going to use that one, and I'll credit you for it.
Great. Do you think then that, again, this is a difficult one to frame out. Do you think that when you have an alien experience, that too, of course, I consider personally to be a freestanding reality. I know that there are, and to give you my own thing, it's like I think these things are not so far removed from where we are right now. I think there are beings around us immediately right now that we just simply can't see. And the part that interested me about psychedelics was essentially, it's an altered perception, an altered state of consciousness, which I think plays heavily into the entire alien experience. Do you think then that the way a psychedelic drug can basically alter consciousness to make you see things that might ordinarily be there, do you think that the same thing tends to exist in alien experiences where, for some reason, whether it be the release of DMT from the pineal gland at a certain time of the night or day, that enables you to interact with these people? I mean, I know the question out from that is, how does something like that manifest at that point to where your sister can see it, as my wife has seen it, as people I've known have seen it with me? Do you think it's all about the tuning of consciousness, the tuning of the brain, much like a radio skipping stations around, you can tap different places?
How's
that?
Yeah. I feel like saying, yeah, man, hold on a second. Gosh, because I don't know. Here's this. How could I say I don't know? I don't know because the experiences, the ET experiences, not every one of them has ever been exactly the same. You've got different beings. There's different. The color of the sky is different. The feeling that you have. I mean, I specifically remember being in a ship in one of my experiences. In another experience, even though they were at the foot of my bed, and the next thing I know, I'm literally zipping through the cosmos and laughing, by the way, because I'm like, oh, my God, this is so fun. This is amazing. Wow. But there was a level of, seriousness, at the end, of what they were showing me and explaining. That was different. I couldn't even, say that the first experience was, exactly the same as that other experience. So perhaps, maybe it's like this. It's like, whoever we are, right, as individuals, and the vibration that we hold, whatever entity, whether it be ET, spirit, or what have you, or even human being, right, starts to move into our space, and then you've got, a reaction or an action that occurs as a result. Maybe, that's the tuning that we're talking about. There's some call it third entity, right? So there's you and something else, and then whatever that something else is the culmination of the two of you interacting. That's why I think for me, it's different for every experience, because not every one of these beings operates on the same vibration, whether they be in a psychic experience, or the ET experience, or in the ayahuasca experience. So, I don't know if that answers it, but I think there's almost like our own individual tuning that we have as it relates to whatever we're interacting with.
Do you, or have you, over the years with your own experiences, have you noticed at all if the frequency or single event experiences seem to have any bearing on your focus at the moment? In other words, when you focus on or talk about these experiences in any great depth, do you feel in any way that can make something manifest for you in the way of an experience like this?
Yes, and yes, thank you. And especially when I was younger, and not having what I would call the ability to now manage the energy that's moving and flowing inside of my body. So yes, calling in, I wouldn't say calling in that energy, but really focusing in on it, seems to then, whether it be bring on an experience or bring in that connection. Absolutely. Where I'm at now, I think this is kind of important. Where I'm at now is I feel like I'm not going to have any experiences like the what I call the traditional ET experiences. It's kind of funny, right? Traditional ET experiences for it is, right? For a little while, meaning that there's information that's in me subconsciously that's slowly coming out, and I feel it. Like I feel very connected in right now, and I feel like I'm not going to have, I don't need to have the ship and I don't need to have the being walk in. I feel like I'm on my own for a while, even though I'm still very connected in. I don't see them in that physical form. for a little while I haven't, and there's sometimes information that's conveyed psychically now, and so it's almost like it's less energy for them to get here, and then what it's also doing is prompting me to grow and develop my own vibration to kind of meet them, as opposed to them constantly needing to come into my space. I don't know if that makes sense, but So and that's also felt very empowering. To not feel like, oh, they're coming
and you have no control over it, right? Yeah,
I feel there's a co-process that's happening now. It's really it's now collaborative, and they're kind of waiting off to the side until I continue to grow and develop. And at some point, either from off track or on track, or if I need more information, then at that point, it's up to me to initiate the contact.
I noticed that you refer to this whole thing as ET, and I think anybody who's listening to this show knows how I think about the whole extraterrestrial hypothesis of what this is. I mean, when you say that, do you necessarily mean little green men from Planet X, or are we talking about something that's just not from here?
Yeah, again, I don't know the different beings that I've experienced. I don't know where they've come from. They're not little green men.
Right.
They've been different beings. The reason why I say extraterrestrial is because of seeing a UFO, having them literally come through a wall, for their energy first, and then boom, their physical matter at that point, standing at the edge of my bed. So therefore, I say extraterrestrial because of that.
I mean, we're not necessarily talking about nuts and bolts. When we say we see a flying saucer or we see some sort of craft, we're not necessarily talking about, a thing that's a ribbon-studded aircraft.
Star Trek is what we're getting.
Yeah, I mean, that's not necessarily. Is that where you come from with this stuff at all? I mean, or do you see the disc as more of a symbolic kind of an avatar that's just used to more or less make sense for us?
Oh, gosh, you know what? I have to say I never really thought about that. I just kind of made an assumption that, when I was 5 and I saw the ship and it was, just oscillating and it was like quasi physical matter that okay, that's how they get from point A to point B. I was just sorry. I just had kind of like another memory of an experience, and that just popped in. I have to say I do think that with some of the beings, that's how they come in. They come in through technologies that are advanced.
Mm-hmm. I mean, believe me, I'm not so dissuaded from that, because I too have been in a place that clearly wasn't where I was supposed to be at the time. And it certainly seemed like it would be on something advanced. It looked like a made thing. It didn't look like it seemed technological. It didn't necessarily seem like it was visionary or anything like that. It seemed every bit as real as the desk I'm sitting at right now. But I go back to, everybody can get prepared who listen to this show to take a drink, because I'm going to say it again. Terence Mckenna, who did a lot of work with psychedelics most of his life. I mean, more often than not. He described a sighting that he had one time that was essentially, the Adamski craft, the Adamski disc, and he mentioned that this thing went from being a bit of cloud that he saw in the Amazon to a rivet-studded aircraft like that looked exactly like the Adamski disc, which he knew to be a hoax. So he says, what do you say about a phenomenon that actually casts doubt upon itself? Was it more true to itself as the Adamski disc or some cloud? And one of his last lectures that I listened to, he says we're dealing with a culture in a symbiotic relationship that is posing as an extraterrestrial culture so as not to alarm us. I think that's freaking brilliant. It leaves it completely wide open. I was just curious how you viewed this thing as nuts and bolts or not. I see it as both, personally. It doesn't have to. People always ask me, who aren't familiar with the subject, the minute they find I'm into this, well, are they real? And I usually piss them off by saying that depends on what you mean by real. They don't have to be that nuts and bolts thing, but they can be when they want to be. Well, at any rate, Jeremy, you got more, I'm sure.
Yeah. Am I allowed to talk about the Harvard thing that we were at?
Yeah, I don't. Hey, personally, I say yes, because as long as I don't think that we quote names. I think that we're good if we can just do maybe general.
Okay.
Roles that people have, that would be better than names.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I just want to say that I met you at a Harvard gathering that I've spoken about very generally, maybe on this show, but definitely on our message board. Prior to going there, and then of course I didn't really say anything about it afterwards because people wanted to keep their anonymity. But I met you there, and part of your presentation, you talked about, I think, EEG readouts of spiritual guru types versus experiencers. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Let's say there was a study done. It was a little while ago. I think this was when Pierre was in flying high when Dr. Mack was there. And there was a research study that was done. It wasn't done there, but there was information that got then transferred to some of the psychologists that were working with John. And what they found was they had done studies on people that had had experiences, and then done studies on yogis that had trained, in deep meditation for something like, 30 to 35 years. And what they found is that the brain waves were the same for the experiencers as it was for these great yogis. So basically, experiencers can pop into these really deep meditative states without having any formal meditation training. So, I think what can you possibly, extrapolate from that is that experiencers, have this vibration, either that I don't know if they're born with it, or, if it develops later because of these extraordinary experiences that affects them, vibrationally. And as a result, they're able to go into these deeper states. And very quickly, might I add, they're able to pop into these states very quickly.
Well, you've just, in the short amount of time we've spent together, tied Jeff and my stuff together nicely. You've really tied the ends together for us. Because we talk about pretty much everything that we've talked about tonight. Jeff has come out of Jeff and my mouth, and about us. And I sometimes think people must think we're embellishing or cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs or something. But there it is, as Jeff would say. There it is.
There it is. Many of us don't want to accept it, but, in order to actually be sane, walking in your truth is being sane. And if it sounds crazy to other people, well, sorry, we all don't have the same experiences in life.
With that study, do they parse out different types of experiencers, or do they just say, okay, experiencer, guru?
Well, my guess is because this study was done like 10, 15 years ago, that they didn't have the knowledge at the time to know how to slice people up. So they probably just grouped everybody in that had some type of ET contact or thought that they had some type of extraterrestrial experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And do you have any knowledge about what the Dalai Lama feels about this whole experiencer issue?
All right. Are we on record or no?
That would be nice. Are you saying no?
All right. Well, from what the Dalai Lama had a conversation with John Mack. Okay, so this is third-party information, but I've now heard this well over 18 years, that he had a conversation with John. They met with one another. And he whispered to John, and he said, some of our most advanced monks can communicate with beings from other places, not from Earth. And, that was something that he told, whispered to John. So that's a point to kind of, keep off to the side. The other thing that's important is and I wrote about this in the story that I did for, semi-anonymously for Australia.to, that the Karmapa, there's a gentleman by the name of Stéphane Alix, who's a French, he was a war journalist, and he went to go interview the Karmapa. Karmapa actually escaped when he was like 15 years old from Chinese-occupied Tibet, and Chinese government was really upset that the Karmapa escaped because, first of all, they thought they had him. But there's a great story that went along with it about this whole escape. So Stefan, being a French journalist, went to go interview the Karmapa, and the Karmapa looked at him, wasn't going to give him the interview about his escape. He said, "You need to go write a story about people who have seen UFOs and had ET experiences." And this guy's a French journalist, he did stuff in Afghanistan, and he's like, what the, he actually said this, excuse me. Can I swear on this, by the way?
Yeah, why not?
He said, what the fuck is this? I don't think he said it to the Karmapa, although he might have, knowing who he is. So this guy walks out of there, and he's going, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? Why did he just give me this information? He goes, this guy knows nothing about extraterrestrials, nothing about ETs. So what did he do? Guess what? He ended up meeting John and went on this search to learn about it. He wrote a book about it, did a film about it, and now runs an organization called INREES, INREES.com, out in France. And they do some really, really good stuff out there. So, so getting back to that, what are their thoughts on it? Publicly, I've heard them state that, they being, the collective office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, that they really don't have enough knowledge about this to make any firm statements. But what the Dalai Lama, has talked about is, the Buddha's views will change based on science changes. So if we find out some new information, or if we find out something else that we need to know, then, they'll maybe be more vocal about their stance in it. But, my guess is somehow the Karmapa saw Stefan and, something came in for him at that point. And, lo and behold, we now have an organization in France that's doing some really good work around this. And lo and behold, it's affected a lot of other people. So, my guess is they know a lot more than what they really talk about.
So when you said to put that part to the side, does that mean don't air that?
I think, you know what? I think you can. I think it's good information, because I think if there's Buddhists out there that are freaked out about extraterrestrials, I wouldn't say they shouldn't be, but it shouldn't be as freaky, because here is something that actually there's information that the public at large doesn't know as it relates to Buddhism and extraterrestrials.
Is there anything in this tornado of an interview that we haven't covered that you wanted to get to?
You know what? I think this. I think one of the things. I mean, this is where I'm passionate about, and it's on that blog spot. Is
and give us your blog spot.
Sure, it's www.itevolve.blogspot.com. In my experiences, and again, I'm only speaking from mine. Everyone's got different experiences, but I think we're at the cusp as a world in creating a quantum leap in our human consciousness, and some of us have been exposed to these different energies, but also the way that these beings go about either, getting here, if they're coming from somewhere else, through whether it be their technology, how they communicate, with each other, what they do. And I think these little pieces of information are really helpful for us to kind of look at and figure out, and to see if there's something that we can learn from that. So it's not just so much about, what was the impact that it had on me personally, but, how did they go about doing what they did? If you were to kind of like put your head in their psychology for a minute, is there something that we can learn from that to be able to help to create the quantum leap? And I don't know, I think it's a really big piece that, that I haven't seen many people look at, and maybe somebody has, I just don't know who they are yet.
Okay. Susan Kornacki, thank you for coming on the show, and I feel like if you would come back again, we should talk experiences again and flesh out some things.
Okay. All right, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thank you.
Hi, I'm Dennis McKenna, and you're listening to Jeff and Jeremy on Paratopia.
So the Jeff.
So the Jer. Idiots.
Susan Kornacki, eh?
Yeah.
I think it was a good introductory episode for her. I mean, she's going to be back. You know that. So I think just broadly covered where she stands on certain things and what she thinks about certain things. And I thought that the EQ thing was kind of interesting. I like those free flowing ones too, where you can just ask anything.
Yeah, I just wish that 20 minutes of it didn't have to get cut out of the show.
I'm sorry, but
that would have been nice.
I won't be maligned.
You will learn decorum.
That's right.
But so much of what she said really did resonate with me, and certainly I'm sure people in the audience are going, wow, we've heard them talk about all that stuff. So it's interesting to hear someone talk about what we've said and put it in different words and sort of, I mean, her positivity about her experiences, even though she's had reservations and fear and all that stuff, but mainly it's this sort of positivity makes me think that you and I aren't deeper than the average bear on this subject. We're actually missing something.
What do you think we're missing?
I don't know, but I mean, I think if these beings are using or were using fear because you're dense, I mean, if that's true, then I can extrapolate that something similar happened to me, maybe? I don't know. That means that we're the two dunces sitting in the corner that need to be slapped around to realize that this is
You guys get to the back of the room right now. Well, I mean, if we're riding the alien short bus, that's okay with me. I think again, I don't know. I don't necessarily share a lot of our guests' whole thoughts. I mean, I think we definitely agree on certain aspects of this stuff, but I think the notion of positivity, it's based on the individual. I think, it's based on the mindset of that individual and how the experience manifests for them. And again, not to say it's not a freestanding reality. I think it is, but I think the way that it relates to us, that's disgusting. I'm playing guitar. That's it.
No, Mom.
I think.
All I'm doing is eating yogurt, folks. Go ahead.
I think the way that it relates to us is individualized. It's tailor made. I mean, and if her experience with this was all or mostly positive, can't say that there's never been any apprehension or those sort of feelings with her. I think she did say that there was some of that. But by and large, having these benign, positive experiences, I think that reflects upon her mentality as a person. Maybe there's just more courage on her part, more an ability to let go. I mean, my problem has long been letting go. And maybe some people don't have that problem, and that's how it manifests for them. So it's tailor-made to the individual person.
Yeah, but just imagine how different things would be if you could let go, or how far you would get, or whatever that means. What more there is to learn when that.
Well, I mean, don't you think that's part of the process, though? I mean, I think that's decidedly part of what's going on, is learning how to let go of what you perceive to be some toehold on reality that you don't have.
Right.
Or realizing that you have more to do with what manifests in every way of your life than you realize. I mean, how big a thing to miss would that be?
I thought it was interesting that the big UFO event that happened where her sister called over to the window was at 2 or 3 in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Once again, getting back to the magical hour of 3 a.m.
Yeah. Whatever that's all about.
And I thought the Dalai Lama stuff was interesting, too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say to that, but I think it just goes a step further into what we've been saying, which is, the deeper, more complex picture of all of this is kind of where people's attention should be focused, not on cases from the 1950s or contactees or, all of that stuff, government conspiracies and all that stuff. Not that all isn't interesting on its own. But as far as trying to get at this thing, I think you've got to go
in that route that is a little unconventional and a little bit. I saw somebody across the internet who had said something like that they weren't always comfortable with some of the topics and some of the places we went on this show, and I think it behooves people to sit back and go, okay, this isn't my normal thing. This isn't necessarily what I believe, but I'm at least going to give this a listen and see if any of it seems to make any semblance of order for me in the way that I view this. You know, if you're not willing to do that, I mean, number one, this is not the show for you. But number two, this may not be the subject of interest for you. Right. You know, if you're not willing to explore the edges a little bit, you know, and you want to take this, I don't know, this stance of you're trying to police everyone, or you're trying to. I went through that too. I went through that spot where, you know, this is important, and the people who are making light of it have to be exposed, and all of that. And you know what? When you realize the bigger picture of this, you realize these people don't matter anyway, because it's not even in the same realm of discussion, really. So they're irrelevant. It's not that you have to expose anything. They're completely irrelevant to the situation. So, you know, I'm definitely a lot more willing to explore the edges than I used to be.
Well,
and I've seen interesting things, you know.
This podcast is a great equalizer, because I, too, stirred the pot with that. You know, why doesn't ufology have any sort of rules and regulations? Why doesn't it have peer review and all that sort of stuff? And I got some flack for that.
Right.
But ultimately, that in me comes from a place of, I'm an experiencer. Why am I the one that's marginal in this topic? Why is it being talked about by morons and not morons, and they're both willing to share the same stage to speak about the, and I'm the one that's marginal. You know, it's just, none of that makes sense. It's all Alice in Wonderland to me. But to be able to have a podcast and reach people sort of fills that niche, I think. You know, the little niche called caring about what comes out of your mouth. The little niche called caring about what the public is presented as valid evidence of what this thing could be.
All you can do is what you can do. You know what I mean? Right. You're not going to, you know, I think both of us realize, I think for me at least, I had the, I don't know, I kind of had the mindset that, you know, if I took certain actions in this field to do certain things, that other people might pick up on and run with it, and that it might change things. I mean, you have that delusion of grandeur that you can change this, you can make this happen, and you can. You can have an impact on those
things in a way. I mean,
yeah.
I see it. I just see it, like, even in thinking about, like, even Wes Owsley, who was on our show, who's worked for NASA and the cosmonauts and all that. I mean, just the fact that someone of that caliber listens to this show, what is the butterfly effect of that? Or this woman on Facebook who said that she told me that the whole reason she's going to study Reiki energy is because of me. I didn't respond to that because I don't know what to say to that, you know, like, thanks, great. But, I mean, really, that's amazing, isn't it? You know, the fact that somebody would listen to your stories and that would so affect their lives that they're going to make a giant turn like that, or, you know, pick up a study like that, when it may not even be that. But be that as it may.
Yeah.
But it's the culmination of all those little things that you just sort of get the peripheral feeling for that are the effect, you know? It's not what you want the effect to be, unfortunately. It's whatever the effect is, but it's definitely there.
Well, you just hope that whatever you say or do has a positive reaction for somebody.
Right.
You know, you certainly don't want it to have the opposite effect, which is, again, goes back to the notion of the Greer-isms and that exist across the field. You know, I don't think that's a particularly positive thing. And I've always been like this super critical guy of everything and everyone. And the minute that somebody used to start talking about energy, I would be like, switched off.
Well, I get that way. Like when she talks about energy, well, not even energy so much, because I have to say energy for this thing that's in me.
Right.
Because it's that or possession. Not going to admit to that. No, but when she says things like vibration, like raise your vibrational level and all that, like, that makes me cringe, but that's just my aversion to that type of language, because usually it's used wrongly. But really, I think she's just talking about the same thing that you and I talk about. She's just using that language that grates on my nerves, and that's my own issue. That's not hers, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, again, this all does come down to language and communication of feelings and ideas that aren't necessarily the norm. And I think you have to pick the easiest terminology to use without turning people off. And unfortunately, what was it you said about, or I think you've got it on our homepage, something about, you know, the New Agers use words like this and they don't use them in the right context, and therefore it sounds airy-fairy, wishy-washy, whatever. And what we're doing with this, I don't know that we've even done this. I don't know that we've done this or not. But the notion of taking some of these terms back into a more ground-based or realistic way, I guess, is.
I think taking the subject back in a realistic way.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
You know, I mean, I think we've definitely explored some edges already. You know, this season, this is the third show of this new one. So
this is the fourth.
I mean, this is the fourth.
Yep.
We had Colin Andrews. We had Graham Hancock. We had
Ghost Hunt.
Oh, the Ghost Hunt, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, you know, I think already this season we're still exploring those edges a little bit. And, I mean, again, the highlight for me so far has been Colin's show. I think that was...
Well, and to that end, do you want to talk about any of the strange goings-on that have happened after the episode related to...
Sure, here's one for you. I've communicated a lot with Colin since the show. And there was discussion of the symbol that I've talked about on other shows that I haven't publicized, I won't expose yet. But, you know, I was telling you and Colin that here lately I've just kind of had the gut reaction to kind of say it's time to turn it loose and just let people see it. I don't know when that'll be, but Colin is going to be coming back to talk about symbology and crop circle formations and this sort of thing. And I may do it after that. I'm not exactly sure. But weirdness since the show, yeah, I've got...
wait, isn't the weirdness around that the fact that you told him about that and it turns out he was doodling something somewhat...
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too into that because, I don't want to have to describe things that I don't want to talk about or show yet. But he doodled something that was not awfully dissimilar from what my symbol looked like to a certain degree, an element of it. So, yeah, I mean, it was a little weird because immediately he said, I mentioned this symbol about how it showed up, and I conveyed to him, what was going on at the time. And the first words out of his mouth after this, he's like, "Can I just ask, did this involve triangles?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "Well, how interesting. I'll like to see it." And then when I showed it to him, he just wrote me back. He said, "Well, here's my page of doodles, and here's what I drew." And it's not by any means exact, but it certainly, has a commonality element to it, which again was interesting. But since that show, I mean, literally the next night, I started. I go up and go to bed, and when I go to bed, my ritual is brush my teeth, go upstairs, turn the electric blanket on, go down, watch TV for 10 or 15 minutes, turn the electric blanket off, get into bed, and put my iPod on. And usually I let the iPod just sit on my nightstand. I have really long headphones. And I'll put one earbud in. I don't know how else to explain this, and I know how it's going to sound, and I don't want anybody's dirty minds taking over here, but I've been hearing a very short, maybe 3-second duration hum or vibration that seems to be coming from my pillow, as if it's almost in my ear. I can feel it on my face. It's a strong enough hum that it's vibrating, and it made my nose tickle when it happened one time. The next night, it happened again, and it was followed. It's a short, and that's it. I don't sleep with my cell phone. There's no adult toys around, and Lisa will love that one. And there's nothing that should be making that noise, and I've not heard it before. But the last time I heard it, it was a solid 3-second tone with 4 short after that. So I've been sleeping with the digital voice recorder under my pillow just in hopes of trying to hear it or get it onto some kind of audio device. But so far, since I've been doing that, I haven't heard it. Mm-hmm. And then on a second note, my wife has talked about in our house, in our living room, in Jeremy's fart chair, when she sits in that big leather chair that I have, she's a couple of times has been genuinely freaked out and has been telling me that there is a light up near the ceiling, just up and to the left a little bit of the chair. And, the first time she described it to me, she's like, I see it in my peripheral, but when I look right at it, it's not there. But yet I can sit and look at the TV, and I can very clearly see this thing in my peripheral vision above. And I never saw it. And she got kind of aggravated at me. She's like, how can you not see that? It's not small. It's not subtle. But I didn't. And last night I was up late. My back was killing me. I think Jeremy's back problem was taken from Jeremy and given to me.
Well, they don't know that story yet. We'll get to that.
But anyway, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm watching TV, and it is rather late. It's probably close to that 2 or 3 o'clock magic time again, and I see something in my peripheral in that area she's talked about of the ceiling, and it looks like it's dark. It's not a light. It's dark, and it looks like a rounded triangle, very rounded, and to the point where the back end of this thing has no. There's not 2 points. There's only one round back, like a ice cream cone shape, but very rounded on the front too. So you can just basically picture a big circle, a little circle, and they're connected. And it's solid. It seems to have a marbleized kind of look to it that's black with some sort of like brown rusty color marbleization to it. And in the back end of it, where the rounder, bigger part would be, in the center of that is a white light. And it's just moving very slowly. And I look at it, and 1, 2, gone. So I did get to lay eyes directly on this. It was flat. It was rounded edged. It seemed to be just very slowly moving across the ceiling. And I said right out loud, now that's fucking weird. And I looked back up at the TV, and in my peripheral, I could see this white light about the size of a baseball near the ceiling. And it had a scintillation effect to it. It was not excessively bright. It was about the density of what you would call almost like a flashlight brightness if you shone a flashlight on the ceiling. That kind of fuzzy white light. And it was not constant. And it went out, and it came back. I could literally sit and watch the TV and monitor where this thing was. And it, too, was kind of creeping towards the TV. I got up. I looked around. I'm trying to see, we got curtains in the front of the house. Is there anything outside? There is no reason whatsoever for this thing to be where it was. It's not a reflection from outside. It's not the TV. It's not my watch reflecting light from the lamp or anything like that. So I went in, I brushed my teeth, because it did freak me out a little bit. And I went back out. I stood at the front of the chair, and I'm just looking at the ceiling. I'm thinking, put my hand towards up there. I'm feeling around. I don't feel anything. It's not cold. It's not hot. It's not anything. And as I dropped my head down to normal viewing level, something black about a little higher than waist high moved by my right-hand side really quickly, like a really quick, blurry object. I didn't see what the hell it was. And I said, that's it. I'm upstairs. I'm going to bed. So there has been...
well, you forgot an element of the sound story, which is that the reason you had started talking to Colin about that is that... I don't even know if this should be public knowledge, but one of the other family members of one of the people who we had talked about had some sort of tone in their ear or something similar to what you were talking about.
I think, there was something about that. Yeah,
I don't related. It was some related thing, and then you went, "Oh, yeah, that's happening to me," and then you laid out.
I don't even Yeah, I don't even remember exactly what that story was all about. I mean, we corresponded quite a bit after the show. You know, basically, I'm just asking Colin about all sorts of things like 3 a.m. Like, is there any? I'm just looking for all kinds of correlations. What could be similar about different parts of the paranormal study? So, I mean, everything from ghost activity to UFOs to crop circles. You know, what are the commonalities? What are the connective tissues, if there's any? And slowly but surely through emails, we found out there's quite a few. So, but yeah, I mean that tone is really strange. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell it is. My first thought was, is it a vibration from the hard drive on the iPod cycling and stopping? And I've literally laid the iPod under my pillow and laid there and listened, and it's not that. So I got no good answer for that. I don't know what that could be.
Here's my little unfolding.
Yeah.
And I talked about part of this on the message board, and I'm already sick of talking about it out loud, but I'll say it one more time for the cheap seats. Well, as we all know, I have horrible back problems that were livable until I helped my friend Dan move foolishly, and then I basically slipped a disc again to where it was pretty much impossible to sit still, sitting up straight, hurt to lie on my left side. I had one of those, those heating pads that you wear around for 8 hours a day, and, popping Advil and all that sort of stuff. So, what was this? A couple of nights after the podcast? I had, it was in the morning, and I was waking up. Like, I was awake, but I didn't open my eyes. My eyes were just really heavy, but my body was ready to go. But I was in the middle of this dream where I was trying to figure out what it was that Pat Delgado was actually doing when he was cupping his hand and pushing it toward Colin Andrews' stomach. And he said, this happened out in the field. He felt like he was receiving instruction. He didn't know what he was doing. So in the dream, I'm basically I'm asking what that is. And I don't remember the details of the dream until the very end of it, which was about the time I wanted to wake up, but decided not to let it play out. I'm in this movie theater. The movie has ended. Sitting to my right is this giant, either Mexican man or Native American. I couldn't see his eyes. I could just see black where his face should be, except for his chin, which had stubble, and he had long, sort of black curly hair and a big black hat. And he crossed in front of me to leave the theater, and I sort of yanked on his jacket and pulled him down, and I whispered something like, I know what you are, or I know what you can do. You can do magic. Can you teach me? And he puts his, I guess it would be left hand, he cups it. He doesn't put it on my stomach, but he cups it over my stomach. And I feel, in real life, I feel electricity shoot through my stomach. And if you've ever had physical therapy where you've had electricity shot into your muscle, then you know what I'm talking about, except times 1,000. I mean, the inside of my stomach was just sizzling with electricity, and it didn't feel good, and I was scared. But I decided, instead of being scared, instead of giving into that, I just blurted out in the dream. I was like, yeah, that's it. Do that again. Show me what you're doing. Do that again. And he does it again, and I feel it again, and he leaves, and I open my eyes. And I'm lying there in bed, and my back is completely numb from, just my lower back is completely numb. Now, this had happened to my stomach, so what the correlation there is, I don't know. But my back is completely numb, and that finally wears off. And I get up, and my back is healed. It's been healed ever since. Now, I then, I don't know if any of this is related, but 2 nights ago, I won't tell you the dream because it's just, it's a long dream. But basically in the dream, I was shot in the stomach. And it was the kind of thing where, it was one of those really real things where you could feel it. And I'm dying, and I know I'm going to die, and I've got to explain to my mom why this happened, and, all of this. And I start, as I'm in bed, I start coughing, and I cough up. I can feel it in my throat. It feels like a bullet wrapped inside of a membrane, like it's coming up through. Now, and maybe I swallowed a bug or something. It's possible. But it was so huge, and it so felt like a bullet in my throat coming up that, like, a couple more coughs, and I probably would have coughed up a bullet. Like, that was the feeling. But instead I swallowed it back down because it just wasn't coming all the way through my throat. So I thought that was odd, but, whatever. Odd, but nothing. But then last night, I let the meditation energy go. And I did all these things that it's never done before, and a lot of it was concentrating on my stomach and on my back, interestingly enough. And then I was thirsty at one point, and instead of just sort of breaking out of this and going to get a drink, as soon as I thought, well, I'm thirsty, this energy walked me into the kitchen, opened the door to the fridge, and I've got a water jug in there, and it took a couple of steps backward with the fridge open and just started examining, like looking at the water, and then moved closer and like got in there and started doing these hand gestures around the water jug, picked it up with my left hand, which I'm not left-handed, so that was interesting, and took the cap off. I drank the water, put it back, the end. Went back to the living room, did some more exercises or whatever, and then I snapped out of it and went to bed. Somewhere in the middle of the night, I woke up feeling really happy, blissed out. I don't know what the word is, but just spontaneously woke up in a joyous state, and I could feel whatever this energy is. This is not really possible to describe, but it was almost like I could feel it superimposed over me and through me, but not just physically, like me. Like I had merged with it or something. I don't know what that even means. And I'm saying all of this as though it's related. I don't know that it is. I'm just putting out the chronology, and you can relate this however you want. The next thing in this chronology is I get up in the morning, and I have a little battle in my head over what I'm going to eat, because I'm starving, and I really want McDonald's, which is right across the street. But my conscience is going, no, you don't want that. Aren't we done with that? And so I have this little battle in my head about eating meat. And I'm like, but I love meat. It's great. But something in me is going, you're done with that. You don't want that anymore. So, but I say, screw it. Screw you, me. I decide what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Trader Joe's. I'm going to buy a thing of coffee because I'm out of coffee. And then I'm going to go to McDonald's like I wanted and get breakfast. And instead, I go to Trader Joe's. I buy $70 worth of vegetarian food. And I don't go to McDonald's. So I've been a vegetarian since this morning, mysteriously.
The question is, did you buy coffee?
Yes.
Let's see you kick that shit, meditation boy.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I could have. I don't feel like I even really needed to drink it this morning, but it was gingerbread coffee, so I was like, I've got to try that. So my curiosity got the better of me.
Oh.
But yeah, so that's that. And part of that, at least... Oh, well, here's the part that's related to Colin Andrews. Perhaps all of it is. Perhaps all of it spouts from that one healing thing, is that I wrote to Colin Andrews about that dream. And he was like, holy crap. And he wrote, Pat Delgado's daughter, Jan, who he put her email up on his website with my email, so I don't feel bad saying this out loud. But basically what she said was, Pat Delgado... would do this hand gesture toward people's stomachs to heal them, and he had some sort of spiritual guide who was Native American, and when she asked him how it was he knew how to do this, he just said, don't ask. He just basically said, don't ask, just accept it. So there you go. So was I visited by Pat Delgado's Indian guide? I don't know, but
that's weird.
Fascinating stuff. And definitely whatever it was had a real physical effect. Like, once again, I'm, sort of getting back to ayahuasca and that sort of stuff. It's like it almost doesn't matter if you're metaphorically seeing a snake in a forest or and it's a spirit or whatever. If there is some practical effect to it, the effect is the effect,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we will end the show on this note. And if you're one of those listeners who doesn't like it when we attack other shows who attack us, well, we're not going to do that. But we are going to have a little rational discussion about something another show said about us. So if that kind of thing doesn't float your boat, then the episode is officially over for you. You may go. For everyone else,
a sour, a sour note.
Yes. For everyone else, there's a sour note left over.
Right.
No, But we do, I think, feel the need to address something that was put out there that was misinformation about us. So go for it, Jeff.
Well, I mean, essentially what happened is